And now, a CMT original.
Take this job and shove.
Musical badass.
Very unapologetic.
He had two tigers in the back of the bus.
Tends to buck the system.
My name is Blue.
You just look at him and know he's an outlaw.
Who is this guy?
He's a real pisser, man.
Smell of whiskey burning down Copperhead Road.
It's one cool son of a gun. Fearless.
That badass image.
Little too late to do the right thing.
The original bad girl of country music. 24/7, in your face.
I'm gonna do these things exactly my way.
He just blew this town wide open.
He's a real outlaw.
You know what? If you don't like it,
We will kick your ass. That's an outlaw, baby.
What is this outlaw thing anyway? Why does America love outlaws? I'll tell you why. They represent the rebel in all of us. They spit in the face of authority. They raise hell. They don't give a damn what you think. Hell, I made a career out of it. But even I can't hold a candle to this guy. Big, mean, plastered with tattoos. And he's your mother's worst friggin' nightmare.
Gonna drink a couple dozen beers and go out and jam some gears, 'cause I'm a long-haired redneck rock and roll son of the South.
If there's such a thing as an Ozzy Osbourne of country music, it's got to be David Allan Coe.
One true outlaw badass crazy, which is what makes him great.
David Allan Coe often bragged of killing a man in prison. He was never charged with murder, but the small-time felon did spend 20 of his first 34 years in and out of Ohio's reform schools, county jails, and state pens. Paroled in '67, Coe took off for Nashville.
That's the only place my parole officer would allow me to go. He used to wear these capes, which were essentially 4 or 5 fox skins sewn together with the heads, without the eyes.
Me being an animal lover, I was like, God, who is this guy?
I was presenting myself as the mysterious rhinestone cowboy. It was like the Lone Ranger.
Coe signed a record deal in '68, and he had some minor success. Then in the '70s, he wrote #1 hits for Tanya Tucker and Johnny Paycheck. In Coe's wild mind, the logical follow-up was a pair of X-rated albums.
Filthy, disgusting, pornographic songs.
he's scraping the bottom of the barrel. And we love him for it.
This guy's got the guts to sing songs that nobody else would touch.
And I can cuss, I can fight, I can spit, I can belch, I can raise all kinds of hell.
He seems to have that badass image, and I can understand why he has such a following. When God made him, he broke the mold totally.
Rock and roll son of the South.
I actually did a show with him one time years ago, and he invited me on his bus. So we're kind of sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear this, "Rawr!" I'm like, what the hell's that? He had 2 tigers in the back of the bus.
I've just always considered myself an entertainer, basically.
Why don't you ever call me by my mother
Down to the nitty-gritty.
David Allan Coe's my name.
Real outlaw. It's David Allan Coe, man.
Talk about bad.
Maybe it's not the right way, but wrong what I do best.
When you talk about George Jones, you have to talk about the drinking, all the things he did to sort of numb himself.
George's hard living was a part of why his music was so great.
He kind of wrote the book on the out-of-control country singer.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Widely regarded as country music's greatest living singer, George Jones is also one of the greatest hellraisers. Rivers of booze, mountains of cocaine, 3 broken marriages, lawsuits, guns, and car crashes.
There are some people that when their life is in a shambles and everything's falling apart around them, the music is the one thing that they can hold together.
It doesn't hurt your music to be hurting inside.
In 1980, as George's coke-fueled world spun out of control, he recorded the greatest song of his career.
He stopped loving her.
Pain is the mother of invention, not necessity.
He was singing a
song about pain when he was going through a very painful time.
People who are suffering reach out to music.
Whatever hell was going on in George's personal life, he never wandered from the hardcore traditional sound he loved.
He didn't follow trends. He followed only his heart in what he sang.
I am the cold, hard truth. But you're not going to do that. Why did it go?
Hell-raising aside, to me, he's the greatest white singer walking the planet.
This guy's voice is country music.
If I had listened, no, I wouldn't be here today.
He overcome a lot of things in his life, and near death and near being out of the business, he was able to come back.
Living and dying with the choices I made.
I tried to, I guess, live out my song.
Outlaws and the bottle go hand in hand. Hard living and harder liquor. Now you throw a gun into the mix, things get a lot more interesting.
You don't put your gun out when you're drunk. See, it's always when they're drunk they blow it.
One dark night in '57, a thoroughly trashed Ernest Tubb took his .357 and shot up the main lobby of Opry radio station WSM. He was arrested and charged with carrying a weapon and drunken disorderly conduct.
I think the guns are just part of the image. You can't be an outlaw without a gun.
Outlaws and guns go together, but when you mix booze, you're looking for trouble.
George Jones loved those fresh screwdrivers he'd mix up in the orange groves of his Florida plantation, and when the sun went down, the fun got started.
When he's drinking, he turns completely into a madman. He liked to play with guns, and he would shoot guns in the middle of the night. He shot the tiles off the bathroom walls.
George's gunplay wasn't limited to his house. One night he even turned his tour bus into a shooting gallery.
He was drunk. He shot at his driver, and the bullet went through the top where the door. It's a good thing he was a bad shooter, too.
In September 1975, piano-thumping wild man Jerry Lee Lewis shot his bass player in the chest with a .357.
Another gun guy, yeah, definitely another gun guy. Another gun, dope, and God guy. You know?
Then in December of '76, he drove to the gates of Graceland, waving a pistol and demanding to see Elvis.
Shot my bass player, and I'm gonna go meet Elvis with my gun.
You could write a play about that moment, couldn't you? That's just a weird scenario.
That's country.
And I turned 21 in prison, dead life without parole. No one could steer me right, but Mama tried. Mama tried.
I wound up in some of the roughest prisons and the roughest jails in the United States.
Haggard served 3 of 15 for burglary in San Quentin before being paroled in 1960. He spent the next 40 years as the poet of the common man. Drank a little beer in a tavern and then sang a little bit of them working man blues.
He had the name, he had the look, the songwriter, and he came out of California. He was out of the system. You know, he did his own thing.
Merle presented himself to us and said, this is who I am, this is how I feel. Hope you like it.
He understands exactly what he's doing, and nobody's going to tell him how to change things.
Haig proved his point in 1985 when the president of Epic Records questioned the quality of his latest single.
He said, you know, I really don't like Kern River. I said, well, that's about 3 times you've told me that.
The switch went off in Merle, and he got mad.
I said, well, I'm a couple of times behind on telling you to kiss my ass.
And then he said, and I'll kick your, you know, and he challenges the head of the label to a fight.
I wish I had those kind of guts.
No one is the winner, and everyone must lose. Suddenly the war is over, that's the news.
Even today, he is very outspoken, speaks his mind in his music and in his lifestyle.
When the party's over, it's really over good.
He's got the story that goes with the song, that goes with the voice, that goes with all of it. He lived it. He is country music to me.
I was always rebellious and probably still am.
Wouldn't change back if I could. Play it, Johnny.
An outlaw I'd kiss on the mouth.
If you think I'm badass, I'm gonna show you what badass really means.
And the mad genius who started it all.
The booze and the
Teenage Rolling Stone cover girl, no rules. She's the wild child. Blew Nashville away in the 70s, and they still don't know what to do with it.
I know all my old buddies wanna help me out, but it's a little too late to do the right thing now.
I think Tanya Tucker was Madonna before Madonna was Madonna.
Tanya Tucker is the original bad girl of country music.
Man, she was at an early age a very sexy girl, and I think she knew it.
There could be no Shania Twain or Faith Hill had there not been a Tanya Tucker, had there not been that one woman who was willing to say, sex is part of who I am.
She knew that he was taken, but she gave in anyway.
Tanya's tabloid life has been anything but traditional. 3 children, 3 engagements, no marriages.
Her whole life was completely exposed in the press. And she turned around and went, screw you. If you think I'm badass, I'm gonna show you what badass really means. And she did.
She was just Tanya, all the time, 24/7, in your face, this is me, take it or leave it.
Her life has always been an open book. It's never bothered her.
If they ever start telling the truth, that's when I'm gonna start worrying. As long as they lie about me, I'm okay with that.
There's never any trouble for me to find some kind of trouble.
Well, now, in 1997, Tanya was out partying with this network newsman, Stone Phillips. They hit a Nashville nightclub, and Tanya jumped on stage for a Girl Who's Gone Wild moment of her own.
Lifted her shirt and revealed herself to him and the rest of the crowd.
I saw her the next day or the day after, and I said, well, do you remember what happened? And she said, oh, yes. She said, I remember every bit of it. She said, I told him I was going to show him a good time. I showed him 2 of them.
A totally free spirit, completely unpredictable. Her American dream throbs on, does it not? Sing to me, baby.
Oh, live fast and die young. That's who he was. And he was the light and the darkness. He exposed his tortured soul and he offered it up to us. And he left his fingerprints all over the first draft of the Outlaw Handbook.
Go honky tonkin', honey, baby. We'll go honky tonkin' round this town.
Born a genius, self-destructive, loner. Probably the first artist in country music who truly did not give a damn.
You read the books about the morphine, and you read the books about the booze and the pills, and the doctor that didn't even have a license.
A lot of heartache, a lot of pain.
He reminded me of somebody who took the blues to another place that nobody had gone.
Sure makes us feel good to hear it.
With his renegade lifestyle and stripped-down music, Hank not only set new standards for country, he laid the foundation stone for rock and roll.
Move over, little dog, 'cause the big dog's moving in.
Songs like Moving On Over, I mean, that was rockabilly. That's where rock and roll came from.
A lot of those sounds evolved on into early rock and roll, really.
Grab that guitar. Sang what come out, baby, because that's the real McCoy.
He was a sex symbol in 1951. Believe me, he was.
In true rebel fashion, Hank Williams checked out young. Dead in the backseat of his caddy on New Year's Day, 1953. 29 years old.
I mean, that's definitely added to his mystique and his whole tragic story. But if you take all that away, there's still those songs, you know, and that voice.
I've never seen a night so long.
It's hard not to get emotional when you listen to I'm So Lonesome I Can Cry and wonder what was going on inside the head of his.
We have this nasty myth in the society that in order to be an artist, you need to suffer and you need to drink or take drugs or preferably do all of those things. And if you want to be immortal, it helps if you die from that.
He was the first to do this. Later to visit, you know, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, I mean, name it.
He started with all that drinking and carousing, having a good time, and we're just trying to live up to the Hank Williams legend.
A bit of Hank Sr.'s ghost is in all of us.
I'm so lonesome I could cry.
Years before they became successful, a boozy and pill-happy collection of songwriters, including Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Roger Miller, held court in Nashville saloons and honky-tonks, making music and raising hell.
People that have artistic bents are a little predisposed to outlandish behavior, especially if you're allowed to get by with it.
And those guys certainly live life to its fullest. Had a lot of life experience to draw from.
In 1968, a new songwriter stormed into Nashville. Like the writers before him, Texan Billy Joe Shaver was wild as hell and immensely talented. His songs romanticized a hard-living lifestyle and changed the face of country music along the way.
Been to Georgia on a fast train, honey. I was born yesterday.
You just look at him and know he's an outlaw. Don't mess with Billy Joe Shaver. He'll knock you right on down.
During his first week in Nashville, Shaver made an instant impact on Music City's reigning songwriter king, Harlan Howard.
Billy Joe Shaver drove his motorcycle up on Harlan's front porch. Harlan comes out and says, "Who the hell are you?" And Billy Joe says, "I'm the best songwriter in Nashville."
Shaver then stalked Waylon Jennings for 2 years to get him to keep his promise to record an album's worth of his songs.
Billy Joe finally got into his studio and walked past two bikers who were guarding Waylon and got in his face and said, "When are you going to cut my damn album?"
Waylon finally did cut Honky Tonk Heroes, the album that ignited country music's outlaw movement.
Honky tonk heroes like me.
Billy Joe Shaver, in retrospect, I think became the glue that cemented the outlaw movement.
One of the greatest songwriters of all time, period.
He's the last great cowboy poet in America. There's no one like Billy Joe.
Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing ain't worth nothing, but it's free.
Chris Christopherson could have done anything he wanted to in his life. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He was a very smart guy. And he chose country music and chose songwriting, and he followed his heart. He followed his passion.
Chris Christopherson landed in Nashville in 1965. Disowned by his parents and divorced by his wife, he chucked a high-flying Army career and a West Point teaching assignment for the life of a struggling artist.
I'm not real proud of it, but I think it was necessary. You know, it just had to be done.
Smarts don't make a great songwriter, living does.
Christopherson ultimately achieved legendary status as a songwriter, penning sexually charged hits like Help Me Make It Through the Night, For the Good Times, and Me and Bobby McGee.
Of course, he was a great-looking guy and very, very sexual.
I'm pretty sure Chris has done his share of living.
What close now? Are you watching me now?
He led a very rugged, rough, drug, alcohol-addicted lifestyle.
The trick is to be able to get back up while you still got something left to give. You know, and I think he did that.
Chris knew either quit drinking or die. Clean for the first time in decades, he poured his soul into songs that mirrored his sometimes extreme political views.
Just another holy man tries to make a stand. I've got to kill him.
He's doing what he has to do. You know, I admire somebody who acts out of their convictions.
Put his career and reputation on the line just to tell the truth.
To this day, Christopherson refuses to back down from his controversial beliefs. When many artists were trashing the Dixie Chicks for their criticism of the Iraq War, he defended them.
He stands up for what he believes in, and if it's unpopular, so what?
I've never been able to write anything that I didn't feel.
He's one of the best songwriters that's ever sucked air.
A hellraiser with a hair-trigger temper.
That bullet went in right above my eyebrow.
And our #1 outlaw shakes things up.
He just blew this town wide open.
There's a problem with being an outlaw. You spend your life flirting with danger. Outrageous is one thing, and being out of control, man, that's something else. This guy was crazy. He rolled into Nashville in the 50s after spending 2 years in a Navy brig for almost beating an officer to death. He was an exceptional talent, but violent as hell.
Yeah, we busted down the north, walking round the day.
He had that outlaw rebel edge from the start.
He was somebody who just had the look. He had that ragged edge that he could put in his voice, and it was from just plain old hell raising.
He sang those songs, you know he lived it, and he did live it.
Every month's 29 days.
was somebody who probably had a lot of demons. He drank and smoked and did anything you could probably do, and he sang about it.
Living on the edge and often on the street, Paycheck drank his way through numerous record deals during the 60s, and then in 1977, he recorded his only #1 hit, a blue-collar anthem written by fellow outlaw David Allen Coe.
Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. All I got left to all that reason that I was working for.
Boy, when Take This Job and Shove It came out, it was like a whirlwind.
Johnny Paycheck was perfect for that song because, you know, I could just picture him, you know, with his attitude, just walking in there and telling his boss, you know, here, just take this job and shove it.
By 85, Paycheck's explosive temper and a belly full of booze finally got the better of him. He pulled out his Saturday night special in Ohio honky-tonk and let her rip.
That bullet went in right above my eyebrow and come out up here. That's back when I used to drink, you know. And if I hadn't been drinking, I would have been in them places.
Paycheck was sentenced to 9 years for aggravated assault and pardoned in 1991 only after serving 2. He was welcomed back by his brother-in-arms, Waylon Jennings and George Jones.
Still isn't great. How's it feel to be out now? I guess that's as close to heaven as I'm ever going to get.
Johnny Paycheck was an outlaw just because he just couldn't help it. It was just in his blood.
If I was all the things they said I was, I wouldn't have time to do nothing.
Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more.
Smell of whiskey burning down Copperhead Road.
When Steve Earle hit big in '85, he turned Music City on its ear with his ferocious blend of country and rock, an equally unruly attitude.
He was an outlaw, man. He fought against everything, including himself.
I don't have a problem with authority. Authority has a problem with me. He was totally defiant and said, you know, I'm just going to do the kind of music that I love to do.
Nobody even considers for 1 second trying to tell me how to do it.
For his second MCA album, Exit Zero, Steve insisted that the cover show only a photo of a highway sign, not the industry standard 8x10. Label executive Tony Brown drew the short straw and tried to change Steve's mind at a dinner meeting.
He took his plate and just flipped his steak at me, and it landed right on in front of me. And then he called me a couple of names that I won't repeat. Exit Zero is still in print. Go pick one up and see what the cover is.
Steve's devotion to his art was matched by his dedication to hard living and even harder drugs.
Heroin's the only thing, the only gift that you can bring. Heroin's the only thing.
By the early 90s, Steve was in junkie hell. He was busted for possession. 4 months later, he emerged drug-free, but with the same rebellious fire in his belly.
Yeah, but be careful what you wish for, friend, 'cause I've been to hell and now I'm back again.
He is one of the few artists in Nashville that can hold their head up next to Bruce Springsteen. One of the only artists that we have who is willing to stand up and be counted in very, very unpopular causes.
Dead machines were rumbling across the ground where Jesus stood.
I don't have it in me to just write songs because I think this isn't going to piss anybody off.
He comes right out and says it, and I suppose he can offend people sometimes, but, you know, he speaks the truth.
I feel responsible to myself.
You know what drives me crazy? Squeezing outlaw music into nice, neat little boxes. Like, you can't have country unless you got a fiddle. Now, who said? These guys. They take traditional country. They throw in some rock, blues, and even a little rap. Now, have they polluted the pure, unspoiled stream of country music? Hell yeah!
Goodness gracious, balls of fire.
The killer has always lived by his own set of rules in his life and in his music.
Gary Lee Lewis was just so talented, still is so talented that it's scary.
He invented his own style of piano playing. He beat the thing to death. He didn't finesse it, he beat it into submission.
Jerry Lee Lewis personified that. To hell with the earth, we're going wild, baby. No holds barred. Shackles? I don't think so.
Gracious, great balls of fire.
Graham Parsons pioneered the idea that a rock band could play country music.
In terms of inspiration and for what he brought to the country and rock fusion, I think he was incredibly important.
He pushed the Byrds into country rock. He pushed the Rolling Stones into country rock.
For Parsons, the hard-living country and rock combination proved deadly. Tragically, he died in September of 1973 after a heroin and tequila binge. Leonard Skinner took country rock, added a big dose of blues, and turned the volume to 11.
The stories and the experiences that they've had on the road and the things that they've been through.
They were road tough. They were outlaws, they were bad, and they were cool.
You get a little older and the body gives out on you, kind of mellow out, but we've still got a wild streak in us.
I think they're going to live forever.
Kid Rock's music is a genre-blurring combination of rap, metal, southern rock, and country, topped off with plenty of badass attitude.
Kid Rock has a true freedom of sound. He doesn't care whether it's rap, whether it's country.
In 2003, Kid proved he could do it all when he released a country single against the wishes of his record label.
The label told him and said, "This song will kill your career."
I found your picture today.
And it was gigantic, huge smash hit.
I love when people defy categories and pigeonholing and stereotypes.
Say I love you. Come back home. My name is Blue. How do you do?
I thought Johnny Cash was the very first musical badass.
He didn't have to wear a shirt that says I'm bad. He was just bad to the bone because he was bad to the bone.
Fueled by a decades-long amphetamine addiction, Johnny Cash was a hellraiser of mythic proportions, leaving in his wake a rock star-worthy list of smash hotel rooms, wrecked cars, and drug busts.
There ain't no good in an evil-hearted woman.
Before his death in 2003, Johnny Cash was well on his way to country music sainthood. He sang of life and death, sin and redemption.
And there ain't no good changing.
The prison stuff, I mean, that's what I identify with because I spent so long in the joint.
In a lot of situations, you know, he did a lot of good things for a lot of good causes.
You could always depend on him to defend you and watch your back.
He was also not afraid to stick his fist up in your face either.
I'm gonna break my rusty cage and
Quintessential country, but he rocked. John did not have boundaries.
I'm gonna break mine.
I can't think of anybody, I mean, that's influenced like rock and roll music, alternative, I mean, all across the world.
It's the whole character that's involved.
Yeah.
You know, he brings a lot more to the table than just what you hear.
I hurt myself today.
That's a hell of a world. The Johnny Cash world had to be pretty, pretty black.
He's the truth. You know, he's real.
I focus on the pain.
You know, a guy who can go from talking to murderers and outlaws to priests to prisoners to everything else. A guy who's famous for kicking out the footlights at the Opry and redeeming himself from drugs and alcohol. That's a true outlaw. That's a true legend.
But you ought to thank me before I die for the gravel in your gut and the spit in your eye. Cause I'm the that named you Sue.
Passing the torch to a new generation.
Another one come around that can spit in your trash can, you know?
And a hellraiser to make his daddy proud.
Here's a guy who most rock stars should take lessons from.
The biggest selling act in the history of country music sits down to talk exclusively with CMT.
You'll be signing an autograph at a soccer game for a little kid, and I said, "You really know who I am?" "Yeah, you're the Dr. Pepper guy." That's how they know me.
Garth is back and talks about his life out of the spotlight.
And this retirement thing's gonna kill me.
And how he plans to get back in.
I couldn't get to Nashville quick enough.
Plus he speaks open.
Just talk to you. No. Now, draw me a mellow, dope-smoking guru with long red braids. Yeah, that's it. But don't let those looks fool you, because this guy is not to be messed with. my friend Shotgun Willie.
Whiskey River, take my mind. Don't let a memory talk to me.
Well, they never cared about fitting in. He never did fit in. That's why he never cared about it. It shows in his face, and it's reflected in his music.
I think he's a universal artist, and I don't think country music can claim him. In fact, I think they did everything they could do to keep him away.
Hello, Waltz. How things go for you today?
He wrote classics like Crazy for Patsy Cline and Nightlife for Ray Price. But Willie Nelson had little early success as a recording artist. His unconventional phrasing and jazz-influenced guitar was completely out of touch with the lush Nashville sound of the 1960s.
After all the voices and the strings and all those things had been put in, sounded beautiful, but it wasn't me.
He just finally said, I'm not going to make music the way everybody thinks I should make music.
And don't cross him, don't boss him, 'cause he's wild in his sorrow when he's writing, and he's hiding his pain.
When Willie went back to Texas, he arrived at one of the most propitious times in music history. He landed in Austin when the hippie and cowboy movements were sort of coalescing.
Called me one time and said, Waylon, come down here. Said, I think I found something.
They started this whole thing, you know, the image being outlaws and all that. It was terrific.
She's a good-hearted woman in love with a good time tonight.
We all, you know, were rooting for him because it meant there was some hope for us.
To me, it meant that we were determined to do what we wanted to do our own way.
Whiskey River, take my mind.
Willie Nelson invented his own job. He created his own self.
Fearless when it comes to not compromising. It's take it or leave it.
One of the prerequisites of a genius is to be able to step outside the box and just do what you feel. And Willie really has done that.
There's been talk that country's gone soft, cookie-cutter artists being churned out by image consultants. Sure, there'll always be some of those acts. But praise be, here's a whole new crop who's got the Opry crowd squirming in their seats again. Well, hello, T-R-O-U-B-L-E. When Travis Tritt broke through in the early 90s, had acts were the rage. Travis refused to fit in. He was a long-haired bluesy country rocker with a desperado attitude.
Let's be perfectly blunt here, Booby. Travis Tritt's the real McCoy. Travis Tritt is a rock and roller.
He was one of the first people who got country rocking. He's got this outlaw voice. You know, he's got this unique voice, this sound that is, when you hear it, there's no saying, man, I wonder who that is. You go, that's Travis Tritt.
I want to talk about me, want to talk about I want to talk.
Modern-day outlaw Toby Keith will take on anyone. Peter Jennings, the Dixie Chicks, or the Taliban.
We'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way.
He is a real outlaw in the sense that Toby absolutely refuses to be politically correct.
He'll let you know how he feels, and I know country music fans love that.
It takes a lot of guts to stand up for what you believe and to not be afraid to be shot down.
He's a real pisser, man.
Montgomery Gentry, followed not only the outspoken nature of the Outlaws, but the hard partying lifestyle as well.
They're a bunch of good old boys from Kentucky.
Definitely got that attitude of, you know, take no prisoners.
If we get classified as outlaws and being in that same company, what better company to be in?
By the end of the tour, those guys had me and my dog drinking moonshine, and that's pretty a frightening sight to see.
Let me get a big hell yeah from the redneck girls like me. Hell yeah!
Like Tanya Tucker before her, Gretchen Wilson proves that being an outlaw isn't just a man's game.
She's an edgy kind of performer. I'm glad to see another one come around and spit in your trash can, you know?
She came out and it was just so confident and so real. She's a real singer. She's a great singer.
Attitude has to come from your soul. And in her soul, she has a bit of this chip on her shoulder that says, I'm kind of pissed off.
It took me a long time to figure out how to write the songs, you know, that explained to everybody who I am. It also took me a long time to figure out it was okay to do that.
Everybody says, save a horse, ride a cowboy.
We present to you country music without prejudice, Big and Rich style.
Big Kenny and John Rich are country's newest mavericks. Their boisterous lyrics and hard rock riffs take country in a whole new direction.
The two of them, they couldn't be more opposite from each other, but you know, somehow it works.
We feel like country music, the way we hear it in our head, is the way we hear it.
I think the thing that was important is just for us to be able to be ourselves, to be able to do what we love to do.
Let's ride a cowboy.
Hank Jr.'s music to me is food for a Southern boy's soul.
Hank was like a modern-day hero to us.
So we'd come through the middle of the town with our trucks, with Hank Jr. just blaring as loud as we could, man, and just looking for somebody to say something.
All my rowdy friends are coming over tonight.
Hank Jr.'s iconic Southern status did not come quick or easy. Can you imagine growing up in the shadow of Hank Williams?
It's like being Winston Churchill Jr. You're never going to win World War II.
At some point, I think that, you just have to say enough's enough and rebel from that.
Little Hank Williams Jr. don't want to be Hank Williams Jr. anymore. He's going to be Bocephus.
He was announcing to the world, I'm making my own music now. I'm not a Hank Williams clone.
In 1981, Hank Jr. had 3 #1 hits, and by 1982, he had 9 of the top 50 country albums. Hank's rock attitude and outlaw lifestyle shocked the Nashville establishment.
He's a wild outlaw. We can't recognize him in Nashville.
Why do you drink to get drunk?
Saying I'm my father's son and I'm not perfect, and you know what? If you don't like it, then go to hell.
Once he broke out of that shell, I mean, there was no turning back for him.
Finally, even the establishment had to agree that this was a superstar.
Naked women and Sarah. We got it all in here.
He just did it once again by being completely himself and not really caring what people thought.
You got to respect that in a man that can go out there and do that.
It didn't take me long to learn to do the guitar boogie.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody cockier. I don't know if I've met anybody more confident.
He's got it going on. One of the best entertainers I've ever seen in my life. Running up and around the stage and just getting wild as hell, man. And I mean, it was like, yeah!
Here's a guy who most rock stars should take lessons from.
You want to know how to raise hell, just start listening to Hank Jr. albums.
They must kiss.
The album that turned Nashville upside down. 76 was the very first platinum album in country music history. Wanted, The Outlaws. Suddenly, the entire universe shifted on its axis, and the outlaw movement got respect. Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Tom Paul Glaser, and Jesse Coulter were the outlaws who proved once and for all country music has room for everyone.
I was so proud to be part of it. I love characters, and they all were characters.
They were kickers. They let it rip, baby. It had rock and roll, it had country, but it was so authentic.
The best of contemporary rock with the best of contemporary country with the best of traditional country in a way that no one had thought about doing.
They were all free spirits and wanted to do what they wanted to do. America was hungry for something different.
The album also contributed another important element, the perfect name for the movement Waylon and Willie were leading.
I looked up the word outlaw. There was this line that said, living on the outside of the written law. And I said, that's it.
My heroes have always been cowboys.
The Outlaws package was the whole deal, It had a title, it had these characters that were like, wow.
Once in a while, things like that happen in history where a band full of people get together. They got power and they got attitude and they got up and kick some ass.
Don't mess around with any old rambling man.
How do you describe the ultimate outlaw? Dangerous, brooding, menacing, brilliant. Waylon Jennings was all that and more. He had musical integrity of 10 men and always the heart of a lion. He took on all comers. And when it came to his music, he never ever backed down.
It's the same old blues, fiddle and guitar. Where do we take it from here?
In Waylon's heyday, he was the baddest ass around. And he still was until the day he died.
Talking about defiance and middle finger celebration.
He's a man who just lived his life the way he was going to live it.
I've always been crazy, it's kept me from going insane.
He felt it the way he felt it, very unapologetic. After playing the Nashville game as a recording artist with only marginal success for most of the 60s, Waylon decided to take direct control of his music. He took on the Nashville system and shook it to its very core.
I'm going to produce my own records. I'm going to write my own songs. I'm going to use my own band. I'm going to do these things exactly my way.
He wasn't going to let anybody in this town or any other town tell him how to make records.
He was dead serious about it.
And I think after he threatened to kill a couple people, he did it the way he wanted to do it.
In 1972, with his self-produced album under his belt, Waylon hit the road. First stop, New York City's top rock club, Max's Kansas City. Waylon informed Manhattan's rock and roll glitterati that he was about to play some country music.
And we sure hope you like it, but if you don't like it, you better keep your mouth shut, because we will kick your ass.
Somebody said, well, who the hell are you?
And that's Waylon damn Jennings.
With his unrelenting, raw, and stripped-down sound, Waylon piled up a string of gold and platinum albums through the 70s and 80s with sales figures unheard of in country music.
He just blew this town wide open. I mean, he did.
And you got to look up to a guy that knew what he wanted to do and knew the kind of songs he wanted to record and refused to be a puppet.
He always told me when I was young, don't ever try and be like anybody else, because you never will be.
If you start putting limits on music, you might as well take it to the house.
Defiant, uninhibited, spontaneous, irreverent. That's an outlaw, baby.
There you have it. Country's biggest and baddest. They may not be the prettiest, have the best voices, and sell the most records. But like all true outlaws, they don't really give a damn.
The outlaw thing, I don't know what that meant exactly. I even looked it up in the dictionary. And what it says is someone who lives outside of a working system. Right? I didn't think it was a working system. It wasn't selling no records, so why the heck would that be a working system? They thought I was crazy. And I was in a lot of ways, you know. And I did a lot of things that were wrong, but I did a lot of things that were right, too. Trying to play the music that I heard in my head. Maybe I did fight the system, but they lost. I didn't win. They lost.